All right, so first of all, you're going to need to gather some things and get some resources available to you. Obviously, you need your mannequin. We're going to be focusing on the skull, so you just need the torso. You need a pencil. This is very important. We are going to be writing on the mannequin. Use pencil and write lightly. At the end of the semester, we're going to ask you to erase every mark you make. So if you drill in and make really big, thick marks, that's a lot more work for you to clean up. So write lightly, help everybody out. Number two, you're going to need some good pictures of the skull. There's some in your lab that may or may not look well due to the copy machine, but we'll put some slides up on Schoology so you can get some good pictures. There's also the coloring packet that you have, which has some good pictures of different angles as well. So I would encourage you to get all of this out, and if you want to color as we go through and do this, might not be a terrible idea to pause the video and color code while you're going. That might help you learn the video, or learn the structures. So let's start. We are going to draw the different bones of the skull directly onto our mannequin. So the first bone that it's asking about is the frontal bone. If you look on the computer screen, you can find the frontal bone here in orange, and then there it is on the anterior view right in front. And so what we're going to try and do is recreate that on the mannequin. So the coloring page is actually quite useful if you kind of hold the skull, the mannequin right up next to the picture. You can kind of see number one is the frontal bone. And I'm just going to try and trace roughly that line, writing very lightly. I'm going to draw like that and kind of go across. And you can see that I've kind of isolated that bone. And I'm going to simply write a letter A on there, again, writing lightly, to indicate that A is the frontal bone. Then we're going to go to the parietal bone. If we look at the screen here, parietal bone is this blue one. And so if you look at the coloring packet, you see that the parietal bone is number 2. And so just very roughly, again, doesn't have to be perfect, but we're going to come down this way, over the ear a little bit, and then back. And I'm going to label the parietal bone letter B, as is indicated in the lab. Okay, so I have the parietal bone there. The third bone is the occipital bone, and you might be noticing a theme with the brain structures. We have the frontal, the parietal. Occipital is in the very back, covers the occipital lobe of the brain. And so for that one, that's structure number 14 here. And so again, I'm going to hold my mannequin up and just kind of draw a little line there. And the occipital bone, I'm going to call letter C. Finally, we have the temporal bone. That was the last lobe of the brain. And so the temporal bone is this red one that you can see on the screen. Note that it includes that little arch part. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my packet here, and it's going to come, it's going to include part of that arch, and then it kind of comes down from this part of the parietal, and it takes up where the ear is and all of this area right in here, and that is going to be letter D. Note that you can feel that arch on the side of your face. If you, right here, you should be able to feel that arch right there on your face. It's kind of cool. So that's part of the temporal bone. So we have the frontal bone A, parietal bone B, occipital bone C, and temporal bone D. All of those should be review terms based on the brain. Now we got some new ones. The next one is the zygomatic bone. The zygomatic bone is the green bone right in front here. And so on the mannequin, it's this bulgy thing right here. So I'm going to kind of isolate that a little bit here and draw that out. That zygomatic bone is letter E. And you can see it on the coloring packet as number 10. And you can also feel that one on your own face. That's this sort of bumpy prominence that comes out right below your eyeball, and you can feel that zygomatic bone turns into the temporal bone when it hits that arch. The next one then is the sphenoid bone. The sphenoid bone is this purple one right in here. And you'll notice that we've actually already kind of carved it out. The zygomatic bone, the frontal bone, the parietal bone, and the temporal bone all surround it. So this little area here, I'm going to call letter F. And that is the sphenoid bone, which is indicated by number 3 here as well. And that is the temples. So if you feel on your own skull, the temple area, that is the sphenoid bone. Next is the nasal bone. The nasal bone, as you might expect, is at the top of the nose, right there in blue. And so if you come down to the coloring, you'll see it's number 9, and it's basically at the tip of the nose. So I'm going to draw a little notch there, and that is letter G, right there. And you can feel that on your own skull right here. It's the top of the nose, and then down here where it gets more wiggly, that's where it turns into cartilage. But up here is bone, and when you break your nose, you're breaking the nasal bone. The next structure then is the maxilla. The maxilla is actually best seen on the anterior view. It's this yellow shaped bone. It kind of has a butterfly-like shape, and it basically makes up the front of your face. And so on the mannequin, it's structure 11, and it basically makes up all of this area, between the eye all the way to the zygomatic and down and around. This is letter H, and the way I remember this maxilla is this top part of the face is that Max has a mustache. So think of somebody named Max, picture him with a mustache, and there's your little clue. Max has a mustache. The maxilla is where a mustache might go. The final facial bone is the mandible. The mandible is this orange one right here, and it's basically the lower jaw. And so no drawing really needed. It's just this clear, separate lower jaw right here. That is going to be letter I. And note that little corner there. You can feel that on your own jaw, right about here. You can kind of feel that as well. So to recap, frontal bone, parietal bone, occipital bone, temporal bone, zygomatic bone, that's the cheekbones, that prominence in your cheek. Sphenoid bone, that's your temple. Nasal bone, that's right above your nose. Maxilla, and mandible. That's it. Thanks for watching.